Welcome to Sales, Tax, and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now, here is your host, Michael Fleming.
Hi, Mike Fleming here. I'm the founder of Sales, Tax, and More, and today's co-host of the Sales, Tax, and More podcast, where we talk about everybody's favorite subject, which is, of course, sales tax. Today, my co-host Ellie Moffitt and I, we're going to be talking about a question that comes up in virtually all of our webinars now. Whenever we start talking about marketplaces, which I had assumed everyone knows what a marketplace is, but we get a lot of questions. What is a marketplace? So I guess shame on me for assuming anything, but we figured we were going to have today's podcast be all about a marketplace. So before we start talking about marketplaces, or actually having Ellie interview me about marketplaces, let's turn it over to Ellie. Let Ellie say hi.
Hey everyone, Mike, really great to be here. I'm going to do a quick introduction for Sales, Tax, and More, and then we can go ahead and get started. So Sales, Tax, and More, we are a full-service consulting and solutions firm. We have a really great team here of experienced tax professionals who are very dedicated to fulfilling any of your state tax and related needs. So we do a lot of sales tax returns, sales tax registration, sales tax audits, consulting, research, and like our name states, more. So if you have questions about our services, please reach out and ask. We'll give you plenty of ways to do so. End of the year is coming up, so if you are trying to fulfill any of your needs, let us know. We'd love to help you. So Mike, as you were just mentioning, one of the most frequent questions we get when we do any of our Nexus webinars is, what is a marketplace? Without fail, there's always just a handful of these questions in there. So I thought I would ask you a couple questions about marketplaces and state tax. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So let's just start really basic here. Mike, what is a marketplace?
Okay. I could start off with it depends, but I'm going to go a different direction. And while that seems like it's a basic question, and it is, it's certainly not a simple answer. And the reason why it's not a simple answer is because every state defines what a marketplace is differently. One thing that all of the states say is that it involves a person that contracts with a seller, and you got to have some compensation in there. You got to be getting paid some way, and you facilitate the sale somehow. So that's the language that these states use. But, what does facilitation mean? That is the big question here. And that's the part that varies widely by state. So most states break it down to two different concepts. And the first one, pretty easy to understand. You got to be collecting the money. So lots of different ways to collect the money. That's fairly simple. But then you have to provide additional services. So it's not just collect the money, it's provide additional services that help the transaction to close. And these services vary widely by state. I'm going to read you what Georgia says. Georgia is one of the most comprehensive states out there. So let's take a look at this. Services may include, but are not limited to promoting, marketing, advertising, taking orders or reservations for such retail sale, providing the physical or electronic infrastructure that brings purchases and marketplace sellers together for such retail sale, or otherwise similarly assisting the seller in making such retail sale, or transmitting or otherwise similarly communicating the offer and acceptance between the marketplace seller and the purchaser, for or otherwise similarly assisting the seller for such retail sale. That's a mouthful. A lot of things in there. Some states, are going to limit it to just tangible personal property when they're talking about these things. But you can see Georgia was very, very specific in here on a lot of different things. And that's because they tax or they consider a marketplace to not only be someone who's selling tangible personal property, but perhaps services or they also Airbnb. So services like that, Grubhub, food delivery services, and even rideshare programs like Lyft or Uber. So it can be a lot of different things. What it's not, and Georgia specifically excludes this, as most states do. If you're just merely collecting the payment, then that is not a marketplace. You've got to be providing one of these other services that I've just gone through.
So, Mike, are you trying to make it confusing just because I said it was easy, or what was it?
I thought about giving you a hard time about that, but no, it's just a tough question to answer. Perhaps I can give some examples, and that'll better help clarify this. Maybe I should have did the examples first. So we've all shopped on Amazon, I would assume by this point, or all know who Amazon is. Amazon is a marketplace. eBay is a marketplace. Walmart.com is a marketplace. Etsy and similar companies, they're all marketplaces. Now, what are not marketplaces are sites like Shopify or WooCommerce or BigCommerce. Or your own website, however you've got it posted. These are not marketplaces. And the difference between the two, companies like Shopify and WooCommerce, BigCommerce, they give you the ability to set up a store and they are collecting the payment, but they're not providing any of these other services like we've talked about before, whereas an Amazon is accepting the order and relaying the order. And they are, if you go to a site like Amazon, you can type something in, it's going to give you a list of all the sellers who are offering that product. Same thing on any of these other marketplaces, but you can't do that on sites like Shopify or WooCommerce or BigCommerce. So the big difference is being able to go to that marketplace and being able to find out everything that they have for sale based on a search feature. At least that's the way I simplify it. I hope that's making it a little bit easier because I'm going to throw you a curveball. And we said not your own website. However, what we're finding out is that many companies, especially those selling software or software as a service, they're finding out that their business models they're putting together nowadays could actually fit, or they're offering services over the internet. These could actually fit the definition of a marketplace. So we have a lot of companies that wake up one morning and all of a sudden say, oh my, am I a marketplace? And we are providing a lot of guidance. Sometimes we say, nope, you're definitely not a marketplace. Other times we say, yeah, we think that you could be considered a marketplace. So while it's easy to think of these marketplaces as just Amazon or just eBay or, Airbnb or companies like this, could actually be our own websites. So in general, if you're just selling tangible personal property, you're not contracting with anybody else to sell their products and services. Your own website is fine. But if you've got other people involved on your website, chances are you might be a marketplace.
Wow, thank you so much. That does make it a little bit easier to understand. So I think the next question that is important to ask here, Mike, why is knowing what a marketplace is so important?
Well, I think this question is easier to understand. So states have passed what we call the marketplace facilitator laws. And what that simply means is the state is now requiring third parties to collect and remit the sales tax on behalf of third-party sellers. Prior to this, the third-party seller was, if they had Nexus was responsible for collecting and remitting the tax. So the reason why this is such a good thing for these marketplace sellers, if you're only selling on a marketplace, is that once the marketplace begins collecting the tax, you no longer have a responsibility for that sale. It becomes a sale of the marketplace. For sales tax purposes, income tax purposes, a whole nother story. But for sales tax purposes, you're not responsible anymore. And all the states except for Florida, Kansas, and Missouri have implemented these marketplace collection statutes. Even Alaska on their local taxes have, said that the marketplaces have to collect. So if you're only selling on a marketplace, this is great because now you can actually deregister in states once the marketplace begins collecting, or if you're not registered, you no longer have to worry about that sales tax. So very, very good if you're only selling on a marketplace. If you're not selling on a marketplace only, I mean, maybe you're selling on Amazon and your own website, or Amazon and Shopify. Well, those are selling on a marketplace and not selling on a marketplace. And now you still may have to continue being registered. So that's why it's so good. It provides such relief to a lot of these smaller sellers out there, and even larger sellers who are selling only on marketplaces.
So, Mike, I have to ask, is there any other reason for knowing what a marketplace is? No reason left unturned here.
Yeah, and actually, I should have mentioned this, but and this is probably one of the reasons why we get this question so much. Since the Wayfair case, we have economic nexus, and economic nexus simply means that this link or connection, that's what the nexus means, can now be created by having just a certain level of sales into a state, or a certain number of transactions into a state. And some states include marketplace transactions, but many states exclude marketplace transactions. So when you're figuring if you're over the thresholds or not, you got to know which does which. And by the way, we have a great site on our chart Ellie will link to, but it tells you who includes it and who doesn't include it. So that's very, very important to know, because when you're figuring out if you should register or not register, if most of your sales are through marketplaces and they don't include this, well, all of a sudden you are not, you don't have Nexus in the state because those marketplace sales are excluded. You don't count them in your threshold calculations. Very, very important to realize this, because most of the software companies out there, these software companies who, say, I got a great Nexus tool, it's not such a great tool. Most of them, they're going to give you a lot of false positives because they're not getting granular enough and they're not excluding sales. So you're going out and getting registered in more states, or your clients are going out and getting registered in more states than they actually need to. That chart that Ellie's going to link with this podcast here, it's a great tool. It's really going to help you out. And, if you want to use a software company, great. But go ahead and check their recommendations. Go ahead and make sure that you actually do have Nexus once you exclude all the different types of sales. Some states, exclude sales for resales. Some states exclude exempt sales. Most of the time, these softwares are just looking at total sales. So lots of exemptions in the chart will really help you on that. But one of the biggest exemptions is these marketplace sales.
So, Mike, if I'm hearing and understanding you correctly, this sounds like great news. Are there any caveats?
Well, of course, Ellie. We're talking about sales tax here. There are always caveats.
Always, every single time.
All right. So one of the biggest things I see is people only hear what they want to hear. So when we're talking about people who are selling on marketplaces can now deregister. We see a lot of people who are trying to deregister and they have tons of sales on these other platforms like, Shopify or Shopify or WooCommerce or their own website. eBay is a marketplace. So if you're selling on different channels, some marketplaces and some not marketplaces, you've got to look at materiality. We got to look at, the thresholds, but there's a good chance you need to get registered or stay registered if you're selling on more than just a marketplace. So it can get a little confusing in there. If you're just selling on marketplaces, then you can deregister. You are not worried about sales tax going forward once the state passes these collection laws and the marketplace has actually been collecting. But you got to make sure that that's all you're doing. So that's number one. Number two is the marketplaces don't pay you income tax. And income tax Nexus sometimes is the same as sales tax Nexus. Sometimes it's different. In a lot of these states, even though you deregister for sales tax, you still have a responsibility to pay their income tax. Again, sometimes people don't look at this because the exposure is just not material. But for any of the larger sellers out there, income tax is going to be a much, much bigger problem going forward. And even just if you're selling on Amazon or one of these other, e-commerce marketplaces, I think we all have to start paying more attention to income tax going forward. A couple of reasons for it, but basically the states are just getting a lot more aggressive in pursuing income tax. And then, you don't want to deregister in Florida, Kansas, or Missouri. Amazon has warehouses in those states. So if you're already registered there, these states have not yet passed marketplace collection laws. I thought they were going to pass them this year, but then we had the COVID-19, closures, and even the state legislatures closed down. So that's a big issue. You don't want to deregister in your home state. That can create lots of problems. So that's a big caveat. And anywhere that you're, California, you have to be registered in California in order to issue a valid resale certificate. So anywhere that your vendors are asking you for resale certificates, you got to look and say, okay, can I give them some type of alternative documentation, or do I need to stay registered in this state so I can issue a valid resale certificate, or can I ask them to ship to another state other than California or similar type situations? So those are some of the big caveats. And then, a lot of these software companies out there, and even some, other providers, they make their money when they're doing your sales tax returns. A lot of them are saying, hey, even after, the marketplace starts collecting the tax, you need to continue filing returns, and they're $0 returns. That's how they make their money. So they got their thumb on the scale a little bit there. I say, first of all, a lot of the states say, we don't want to do extra work. We don't want to have to process these $0 returns. And most of the penalties and interest are going to be related to the amount of tax you owe. So if you don't have a responsibility to collect tax, who cares? So even in the states that say, yes, you should still be registered, then I think, we got to use some common sense. If it's these sales are now the responsibility of the marketplaces, I think that we can go ahead and deregister. Now, if you are selling on your own website, a lot of times we see someone has, a couple $1 million in sales in their Amazon business, but only a couple $1,000s of sales a year on their own website. I think we need to use common sense here too, because technically in a lot of these states, you should still be collecting the tax on your own website and remitting it to the state. But I went through one the other day, and their current provider told them, oh yeah, you need to stay registered here. I think that they were turning in $240 worth of tax spread out amongst all of the states they were registered. To me, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, you're better off deregistering. And, the state doesn't say you can do that. State says you should stay registered and stay collecting. But all of the penalties and interest and back tax, it's not material. So if any of these states find you, you would be better off waiting for them to come look for you, pay the back tax, the penalty and interest out of your pocket, because that's cheaper than the compliance costs. So I'm a little bit different here. I think that we got to take the cost of compliance into account. And, when we're figuring out what materiality is, just because a state says you should do something doesn't mean it makes good business sense to do so. Flip side of that is, if your sales are material, I think that this is something you need to do sooner rather than later, because the states are just getting a lot more aggressive. And, the higher your sales get, the more material they are, they really could leave a mark. Sometimes they could actually put you out of business. So material sales, get registered. When they're below a certain level, then don't worry about it.
Wow, Mike, thank you for all of that information. I just want to throw one more thing out there to you. Do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'd really just want to drive the point home. If someone's telling you need to continue filing, that's pretty much hogwash. Give us a call. We'll give you the straight and narrow on it. Sometimes, especially if you're selling on, more than a marketplace, you're going to want to continue filing. But most of the time, if you're just selling on a marketplace with the caveats that I gave you before, it's time to deregister. Stop worrying about sales tax going forward. There are some states like California still trying to pursue you for the back sales tax, but not on the sales tax going forward.
Thank you so much again, Mike. And I just want to put out there that, again, we offer a lot of sales tax services here. So if you have questions, if you have needs, please reach out and talk to us about it. We'd love to give you all the information you're looking for. So, and you can reach out to me directly with those questions about our services. My email is emoffat, EMOFFAT, @salestaxandmore.com, or just visit our website, www.salestaxandmore.com. In addition to our services that we offer, we have a long list of resources for you on our website as well. We have a whole series of webinars. We have this podcast. We have a bunch of charts on our website that are free for you to use, as well as our paid portion of our website as well. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us for this podcast where we did talk about marketplaces and state tax. And we do hope that you join us on upcoming webinars as well as podcasts, and hope that y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and check out all of the resources we have out on the web.